Elizabeth II Charles, Prince of Wales Nicola Sturgeon John Swinney Kate Forbes Ken Macintosh Boris Johnson Rishi Sunak. Alistair Jack. The Scottish Government is the devolved government of Scotland. It was formed in 1999 as the Scottish Executive following the 1997 referendum on Scottish devolution. The Scottish Government consists of the Scottish Ministers, which is used to describe their collective legal functions. The Scottish Government is accountable to the Scottish Parliament, which was also created by the Scotland Act 1998 with the First Minister appointed by the monarch. Following a proposal by the Parliament, the responsibilities of the Scottish Parliament fall over matters that are not reserved in law to the Parliament of the United Kingdom. Ministers are appointed by the First Minister with the approval of the Scottish Parliament and the monarch from among the members of the Parliament. The Scotland Act 1998 makes provision for ministers and junior ministers, referred to by the current administration as cabinet secretaries and ministers, in addition to 2 law officers, the Lord Advocate and Solicitor General for Scotland, collectively the Scottish ministers and the civil service staff that support the Scottish Government are formally referred to as the Scottish Administration. In 1885, many domestic policy functions relating to Scotland were brought into responsibilities of a Scottish Office, a department of the Government of the United Kingdom which was headed by a Secretary for Scotland. Later the Secretary of State for Scotland. Following the 1997 referendum on devolution, many of the functions of the Secretary of State for Scotland were transferred to the Scottish ministers, accountable to a devolved Scottish Parliament. The first Scottish Executive was formed by First Minister Donald Dewar, a coalition between the Scottish Labour Party and the Scottish Liberal Democrats. During this period, ministerial appointees were divided into ministers and deputy ministers. The Labour-Liberal Democrat coalition continued under subsequent First Ministers Henry McLeish and Jack McConnell. Following the 2007 Scottish Parliament election, Alex Salmond headed a Scottish National Party administration until his resignation in 2014 and the appointment of his former Deputy First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Since 2007, the Scottish Executive had used the name Scottish Government. The change of name was later recognised in law by the Scotland Act 2012. In 2001, former First Minister Henry McLeish had proposed such a change, but experienced some opposition. At the same time that the Scottish Government began to use its new name, a new emblem was adopted. It replaced the use of a version of the Royal Arms with the flag of Scotland. The Scottish Government is led by the First Minister of Scotland and consists of additional Scottish ministers and the law officers. The Scottish Parliament nominates one of its members to be appointed as First Minister by the Queen. The First Minister appoints additional ministers to a variety of ministerial portfolios. More senior ministers, known as Cabinet Secretaries, collectively form a cabinet with the First Minister. The Scottish law officers, the Lord Advocate and Solicitor, can be appointed without being a member of the Scottish Parliament. However, they are subject to Parliament's approval and scrutiny. Law officers are also appointed by the Queen on the recommendation of the First Minister. The Scottish Government's cabinet collectively take responsibility for policy coordination within the Scottish Government. It is supported by the Cabinet Secretariat, base at St Andrew's House. While the Scottish Parliament is in session, the Cabinet meets weekly. Normally meetings are held on Tuesday afternoons in Bute House, the official residence of the First Minister. There are currently 2 subcommittees of Cabinet. For several years prior to the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games there had been a 3rd subcommittee of Cabinet. The current members of the Scottish Government's Cabinet are junior Scottish ministers, who take the title of Minister, are also appointed to the Scottish Government. Each junior minister has oversight by a particular Cabinet Secretary. The current junior Scottish ministers are. The current law officers are. The responsibilities of the Scottish ministers broadly follow those of the Scottish Parliament, provided for in the Scotland Act 1998 and subsequent UK legislation, where pre-devolution legislation of the UK Parliament provided that certain functions could be performed by UK government ministers. These functions were transferred to the Scottish ministers if they were within the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. The 1998 Act also provided for orders to be made allowing Scottish ministers to exercise powers of UK government ministers in areas that remain reserved to the Parliament of the United Kingdom. Equally, the Act allows for the Scottish Minis